Dude, never did it.
Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Jake Ziegler, and I'm here with Brad Garoon. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. Today, we have a very special episode where we're going to rank the 20 films that were directed by Joel and or Ethan Coen.
Totally excited. So we just saw Drive-Away Dolls, although
Not
by the
together,
time,
unfortunately, but
no, very sad. One day we'll be able to go back. The last movie we saw in theaters together was Joker. We have to redo that.
yeah,
Maybe in April.
yeah, that
I'll
could
be in
work.
Michigan. We may have been the only people who saw Drive-Away Dolls based on the box office of this film.
Right. My wife and I saw it. There was one other very sketchy looking dude in the theater with us.
I went with a friend from work, and we had maybe 10 people in the theater. But this is, 5:30 on a Thursday evening. Like there's on opening night, there should have been more people in this theater. This was not the same experience I had seeing Inside Llewyn Davis in the theater. I'll tell you that. Okay, but let's start at the bottom where we both have the same movie for sure.
Sure. I mean, do we want to say anything about your first introduction to the Coen Brothers at all, or do you want to just jump right into the rankings?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. I have no idea. I can't remember. I think it was Raising Arizona, just because that movie got serious play on cable. No, I take it back now that I'm looking at my list, and this is going to inform where it is on the list, and I think we're going to disagree. It's the Hudsucker Proxy.
Ah,
That was my first introduction, and we'll get to it.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll get to it. But yeah, mine was, I almost positive, the Hudsucker Proxy. It was my introduction to Paul Newman. It was my introduction to Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
It was also my introduction to a guy who is a hometown, I don't want to say a hero, a hometown favorite of mine. It's Bruce Campbell. So yeah, Hudsucker Proxy. How about you?
My first one I remember, and I remember very vividly watching it with Jeff Richardson. We rented Fargo on VHS not long after it had come out. That was the first one I had seen, and that came out in '96. So yeah, we were about 14 at the time, and we had really just started to just get into movies and like start watching like nerdy stuff and like cinephile stuff, and Fargo kind of was a big deal to us when it came out. We watched it many times, and that was when I first discovered them, and then I found out too that the brothers were born. I was born in the same town. My brother and I were born in the very same Minneapolis suburb that Joel and Ethan were born in, which I always like to throw out there.
That is pretty neat. Yeah, that's sort of like where I get my Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi stuff from, and Sam Raimi was very involved in the Hudsucker Proxy. So that's where we're coming from. Jake's coming from the crime side. I'm coming from the madcap, wacky side.
And sometimes those two things intersect.
Well, when we get to Drive-Away Dolls and The Tragedy of Macbeth, we'll talk about that because now it's very clear where each one comes from.
Right.
At number 20, we both have, I assume, The Lady Killers.
Yes, Lady Killers is the bottom of the list.
I'm not going to say too much about this because we talked about this on our 1955 episode when we reviewed the original version of The Lady Killers. So please refer back. I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode. But this movie stinks. It just stinks.
Yeah, it doesn't work. None of it works. It's points for effort, I guess, but none of it works. It's not good.
This isn't the only remake they've done, and they've remade some movies that are very good. We'll talk about True Grit later. I mean, The Tragedy of Macbeth has been made over and over and over again.
Right.
And they usually put a very unique spin on it. And they did put a spin on The Lady Killers, and I found that spin offensive, frankly. So it's not a good movie. What's your number 19?
My number 19 is another one I think that is low for most people, and that's Intolerable Cruelty. Again, I really wanted to like this one. Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones are very attractive people. They can both be very funny, but again, a lot of this just doesn't work. There's a lot of gags that just repeat themselves over and over again that weren't funny the first time, and then they just keep doing them throughout the movie, and then it really falls apart. What little it had going for it really falls apart by the end too. It's just a big disappointment.
So I don't hate this one, but I do have it at number 18. It's not high for me. I just saw it for the first time 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Well, like no one's recommending it, so I
That's true.
wasn't running out of my way to see it. It was the last Coen Brothers movie I hadn't seen, and Drive-Away Dolls was coming out, so I figured, well, now's a good time as any, and I'm glad I did because now I can do this episode. I didn't hate it. I thought it was light. I didn't feel like fulfilled after watching it. It felt kind of not empty, but I didn't think Catherine Zeta-Jones was great in it. She did look great. Like you said, I thought Clooney was pretty funny, but he was leaning really heavy on the Cary Grant in this one.
Yeah.
Like big teeth, big smiles, running around, major, he gets in that mode, usually for the Coens.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Rush was billed really high and then had almost nothing to do. And I really liked his first scene, and then he disappears for most of the movie, only to come back at the end and sort of resolve the plot.
Yeah.
But I did think that Richard Jenkins was very, very funny. The courtroom scene and the deposition scene at the end where he's just flabbergasted and can't handle what's going on. I thought both of those scenes were really great. Jenkins and Jonathan Hadari, who you might not have liked Hadari's role, but he's the guy who's the eccentric dude in the courtroom scene who sort of spoils everything for Catherine Zeta-Jones.
I don't really even remember it all that well.
I thought he was very funny, but I get what you're saying. A lot of the gags were like, if they had said the word Massey prenup one more time, I would have lost my mind.
Yeah.
They really, and it was predictable. The second that Billy Bob Thornton entered, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. But I don't think it's bad, which is great because for me, that means there's only 2 Coen Brothers movies that I thought were, one is bad and one is just didn't. I get why people love it, but it didn't work for me. And we'll get to it when you get to it on your list. But anyway, Intolerable Cruelty is 18 for me.
Yep. So that brings me to my number 18. And I'm really sorry to do this to you after your lovely intro, but my number 18 is the Hudsucker Proxy.
Okay, so I knew this was going to happen because I didn't look at your list, but I remembered from when we were living together that you didn't like this.
That's strange because I remember that I used to like this movie. So it's strange that you remember that.
Maybe I was just disappointed in the day that you reported to me that you didn't.
That might be because I remember that I used to like this movie. It's never been one of my favorites. I know that for sure. It's never been an upper echelon one for me, but
say it right.
Sorry, it's never been upper echelon for me.
Thank you.
Never was one of those, but I remember liking it. And then a couple years ago, we went back again. Jeff Richardson and I went back and we watched all the Coen Brothers movies. And I remember going back and watching it and just being like, again, it just felt like kind of empty. It felt like a lot of gags were just kind of going over and over again, and it just felt like there wasn't really much going on in it. Like Paul Newman was just kind of there, and Tim Robbins was just kind of there, and nothing really happens with any of the characters. And it just, it all felt just kind of flat and lifeless to me. I remember being like zanier and more fun, and it just didn't. And I don't know, maybe it was just with the time I watched it. It just surprised me. I remember liking it more, and it just last time I watched it just didn't click with me for some reason.
How are you with Sam Raimi?
I like Sam Raimi for the most part. Like I haven't really seen, although I say that having not seen the Evil Dead movies,
any of them.
No, not seen any of them, except for I think I saw like whatever remake was in like the 2000 teens.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, Army of Darkness is really funny.
I believe that. I just, and I'm not like I'm avoiding them for any reason. I just never did it.
So the reason I ask is he directed at least one scene in Hudsucker Proxy. The movie does have more of a Raimi vibe. Raimi and the Coens have been friends forever. The Coens wrote one of Raimi's films, Crime Wave, which is, I think they've all kind of disavowed that movie, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's early Raimi, so.
Yeah. This movie has a lot of Raimi's energy in it, but it also, I think a thing that might make people bump against it is it has a bit of an old Tim Burton vibe to it, too. So it does feel a bit more removed, although I really like the caricature characters in it. I think Paul Newman's very good as a sort of creepy CEO during the Depression. I liked the whole hula hoop thing. That's the scene that's directed by Raimi too, is the creation and evolution of the hula hoop. And I like Tim Robbins being a doofus. In a lot of stuff now, he plays a conniving, evil dude, and I like him much more like this. The player, High Fidelity, he's not, you don't like him. I like liking him. I think it's part of the reason Shawshank is so well loved by so many people.
Yeah.
You want to like Tim Robbins, and I really like him here. So that's number 9 on my list.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. That brings us to, that would be number 17. And this is another one that a lot of people really love, is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I think it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's just lower tier for me. Again, I think they repeat a lot of the stuff. Like, how many times is George Clooney going to say we're in a tight spot in this movie? Like, okay, I get it. You're in a tight spot. But yeah, it's funny. I like it. It's just lower tier for me.
What do you have it rated as?
3 stars.
Oh, that's pretty low. So I love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's my number 12. Spoiler alert, I love most of the Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going for like sort of a cartoony Bugs Bunny type deal with Clooney in this one. That's why he's repeating stuff. And I will say, like, we're in a tight spot, not a plot point. It's a catchphrase, whereas Massey Prenup is a MacGuffin, which is why it bothered me so much. And I remembered you being a little bit lower on Oh Brother also. But Tim Blake Nelson and John Turturro are so funny. You always have to...
every time I want to tell somebody something doesn't make sense, I think of John Turturro. That don't make no sense.
We have to talk about John Turturro and Tim Blake Nelson for a second, though, because while John Turturro is not Jewish, did you know Tim Blake Nelson is?
Yes, I actually did know that.
He's an Okie Jew. I mean, like, come on. That doesn't make sense. You should flip that. But
that doesn't make any sense to me. That don't make no sense.
I like the song. I think it works for the movie that Clooney can't sing and they had to dub it, and it's very obvious.
Yep. I heard too that he really wanted to, and he tried
Mhm.
really hard, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah. I
You
thought
can't be good
Charles
at everything, George.
all the things that matter. Charles Durning, I thought was great as the governor. We ain't nickel and diming here. We're mass communicating. Man, great. And then Holly Hunter, we lose her later in the Coen filmography, but
Yeah.
she's so fun as a part of it. When we get to Raising Arizona, we'll talk about her more. What's your number 16?
16 is Burn After Reading, which again I enjoy. There's a lot of really, really funny parts in it, but I think it kind of meanders a lot. The end is really, I think, kind of dark and cynical, just much too much for the rest of the movie. Like it just doesn't really seem to fit the rest of the movie at all. But I mean, gosh, Brad Pitt is hilarious in it. John Malkovich is really funny in it. J.K. Simmons is really funny in it.
Richard Jenkins again.
Yeah, Richard Jenkins is great in it. He and Frances McDormand are good in it. But yeah, I mean, again, I think it's just, I think even people who really like this movie would have to, agree it's not upper tier Coen Brothers movie.
You have not been on Twitter for a long time. People
Really?
love this movie.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
not me though. I
Yeah.
agree with you. This is my number 18, my number 19.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think this is a mean movie. I am really upset when I watch it. I saw it in the theater and thought, yeah, it's pretty funny. And then that last scene with Malkovich and Jenkins, I'm like, no, screw this.
Yeah.
When I watched Intolerable Cruelty, I thought this is the user-friendly version of Burn After Reading. It's not as funny. It doesn't make me feel bad when it's over.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. Like, yeah, after Burn After Reading, like, oh, I feel terrible. And it was unfortunate. 'Cause, yeah, there's some really funny stuff in it. Yeah, then I like how Brad Pitt's just willing to just be totally goofball. I'm not sure if that was the first time he had done totally goofball, but it's one of the ones. I mean, I think of it often when I think of that. That side of him. That's always the image I see is him doing his little dance and his little workout gear. Like that's been memed to death, but it's really funny.
Yeah, I think that might be the first time he did super goofy. Nope, Snatch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's just a whole different person in Snatch.
You're right. Can't remember anything he said in that movie.
Well, you're not supposed to.
Right. All right. That brings us to number 15, which is the recent one, and I think has a lot in common with Burn After Reading, is Drive Away Dolls.
Yeah, so I've got that at number 16.
Yeah, which again, I liked it. I thought it was funny. There's some good stuff in it, but the end, well, I shouldn't say too much about it since it's a more recent one, but I think the end kind of doesn't work.
I was going to say, what end? There's no
right.
ending.
The time when the movie stopped.
Right.
Yeah. But again, it is very funny. It's very funny in spots. It's like an hour and 25 minutes. It's really short. I mean, again, I liked it. I had a good time. Yeah, certainly in that bottom portion of Coen movies. And this is Ethan's solo movie, by the way, I'm sure people listening to this will know that.
I had a hard time with this one. I liked it. I enjoyed my time with it, but I found myself having to convince myself that I was enjoying it. And I think if this was the first Coen movie I ever saw, I would not have liked it. Part of what I liked about it was seeing like, oh, this is Ethan's contribution here and here. So Margot Qualley is doing a Texas accent that don't make no sense.
Yeah.
And I had to keep telling myself, like, this is Raising Arizona. This is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Coens like making fun of the South. This is what's happening.
Yep.
And she's also she's not the bedrock of the movie, that Geraldine Viswanathan, but she is the driving force of the movie. And so you better get used to her talking because she's going to sugar baby her way through the whole thing.
Yeah.
The non-ending I found so strange because this movie's been in development for like 15, 20 years, maybe more.
Forever, yeah.
And I know that it's meant to be part of a trilogy, but there's no plot left. So they're going to find new plot for the next one, which is fine. But I guess what I'm saying is at the same time, it felt like it left a lot on the table while having nothing left to eat.
Yeah.
I like it less the more I think about it. I still think it belongs in my 16 spot. I don't know, actually 17 when we get to it, my movie right below it, sort of chomping at its heels. I feel pretty medium about this one. Needed a little more there. We talked about this on text. The dog track scene, which is like one of the big scenes of the movie, it just doesn't work.
It's really long for such a short movie too.
Yeah. Anyway, what's your 14?
14 might be controversial. Again, I really, really like this movie, but my 14 is Raising Arizona.
So you don't like the wacky stuff?
I do like it. It's not that I don't like it. I just like the other stuff more.
Okay.
Is the issue. I really like Raising Arizona. I mean, Goodman and William Forsythe are really funny in it. I freaking love Holly Hunter in it. I mean, everything she does in that movie is perfect. And I love Nick Cage in that movie. Yeah, it's not like I have like negative things to say about it. I really, really like it. It's just, that's just where it falls on the list for me.
So this is funny. I'm glad you asked that thing about where we started because it really is informing these lists.
Yeah.
I have Raising Arizona at 8. It's so funny.
It is. Yeah.
So this is funny too. I don't know if a lot of people confuse Holly Hunter and Frances McDormand, but I do. And it's because of Raising Arizona, because I think they play sisters in it, or at least friends. They're both in it.
They're definitely friends. Yeah, they don't think
Yeah.
they're sisters, but they're friends. I think they're like, they just know each other. Yeah.
Right. And it might just be because they're both in the Coen stratosphere. I mean, Frances McDormand is married to Joel, but
Yeah.
I love Raising Arizona. There's so much of Raising Arizona that are like seminal moments in movies for me. Like I said, I thought it was the first one I saw. It's not Tudsucker, but that dude coming out of John Goodman and his buddy coming out of the ground, the dude riding on his motorcycle, all the baby stealing. Oh, man, I love it. And Nick Cage, it's like oddly one of his most subdued performances.
I know. And we're all the craziest stuff going on around him. And yeah, he's not the craziest thing in that movie at all.
Yeah. So I don't know. I love it. Number 8 for me.
That brings us to 13. And that's might be a little bit surprising, but is Hail Caesar.
That's my number 15. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, actually, and I remember the first time I saw it at the theater, I was kind of lukewarm on it. It is definitely one that grew on me over time, and I think it took me 2 more times watching it before it really grew on me, and I started to really like it. It was my introduction the first time I saw Alden Ehrenreich in a movie, and he is extraordinarily funny. The scene, I think about this scene fairly frequently, and it just makes me laugh every time I think about it, where he and Ray Fiennes are together, and Ray Fiennes is trying to get him to say, "Would that it were so simple," or something like that. And Ray Fiennes trying to get him to say it, and like Alden Ehrenreich has this big dumb Texas accent going on, and he's trying to say it. And just the two of them going together is one of the funniest things I've seen in a Coen Brothers movie. I mean, it's probably one of like a top 5 funniest scene I've seen for them. I mean, Ray Fiennes is amazing in it. Alden Ehrenreich's amazing in it. George Clooney has some really funny, he's kind of a clueless actor type in it. He's pretty funny in it. The sets are like amazing in it. There's some musical numbers in it. It just feels like they're throwing a lot of shit against the wall in this one. And it's I actually really like it. Now, it took me a while to warm up to, but I really like it now.
Yeah, Hail Caesar is my highest movie at 3.5 stars, and it's number 15. With my number 14, I'm 4 stars for the rest of the way, and 4, to 5.
This is my first 4-star one. We're into 4-star territory now for me.
Yeah, it's 15, but it's just because there's so many great movies on this list. I said this last week. It's a real winning movie. And also, I truly think the more you watch older movies from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, the more you'll get out of Hail Caesar.
Yes, definitely. Scarlett Johansson's really funny in it too. She's got some great scenes in it. If you love the old style movies, I mean, yeah, this is very much in a lot of ways a tribute like to that kind of movie making. It's very cool.
We touched on this for a second last week, and we'll go way more in depth in a future episode. But when I was watching Me and Orson Welles, I thought about Hail Caesar a lot.
Oh yeah, I can see that. That'll bring us up to number 12, and this is Joel's solo effort, The Tragedy of Macbeth, which I thought was really, really good. Again, this story's been done so many times, but this was done and shot in black and white. Denzel Washington in the lead. Shakespeare, I'm not like a huge Shakespeare scholar or anything. I'm done in the right hands, even if I'm not understanding every word and every way that they're saying it. Sometimes it can still be interesting and compelling. Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand, they are certainly 2 actors who are capable of doing that. It looks cool. It's shot cool. Yeah, I just thought it was really, really good. Liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's one of 2 black and white movies we're going to talk about. I also liked it a lot. Like you mentioned, it's Joel's solo, so it is completely humorless. I made a slight mistake. I watched Throne of Blood, which is Kurosawa's take on the same story, right before I watched this. I get why I did it, but it was a goof, because why am I comparing people to Kurosawa? It's not fair. So Throne of Blood is one of the most wild movies you'll ever see. Also, just visually very striking. And so is The Tragedy of Macbeth, but in a very different way. And Tragedy of Macbeth is a little bit slower. And like I said, totally humorless. Throne of Blood doesn't have laughs in it, but it's very stark to see it in a feudal Japan setting rather than the typical Scottish setting, even if you put a black guy in your lead. But, it's got Gleason's. So that's a plus no matter what.
It's a kind of a sparse. The settings and everything are very pretty sparse. It kind of has a theatrical feel to it, which is different than all of the other Coen Brothers stuff. So I like that it's for a solo Joel effort. Yeah, you said it has a different feel to it without Ethan there. And I thought that was very cool.
It's my number 13.
Oh, cool. So yeah, we're pretty right on there.
Yeah, I mean, so let's just real quick touch on. These guys kind of need each other, right? Like these movies are solid, but they're not going to reach the heights without each other. And I understand. Ethan mentioned after Ballad of Buster Scruggs, he was totally burned out. Was feeling like making these movies was a job and it wasn't fun anymore. And that's why he took so much time off and then eventually got into the project that he made with his lesbian wife. There's a rumored horror movie that they're going to make together. But I don't know if it's going to happen. We might just get humorless Joel Coen, Robert Eggers looking movies from now on, and Ethan Coen goofy woofy movies from now on. But we'll see. I hope they come back together because it does feel like they sort of need each other.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get back together. So we're going into up to number 11. We're going to hit the other black and white movie that they have is The Man Who Wasn't There. Really a very bleak, depressing movie from them. But Billy Bob Thornton is just amazing in it. Really great performance by him. Frances McDormand is also really good in it. This is really stylized. The cinematography. This is one of Roger Deakins' best photographed works. The score is great, but yeah, it's not fun. Speaking of humorless, I mean, there's not a whole lot of fun here. It's pretty bleak, but I really like this one.
I've got it at number 17. It's the movie that I said is like nipping at Drive-Away Doll's heels. I was left feeling a little too sad at the end of it, but you've got James Gandolfini doing the John Goodman role, the typical John Goodman Coen's role, and he's very good. Scarlett Johansson is great, and she's very young, but showed a lot of promise. Like you said, Thornton's awesome. There's a really funny turn from a Coen Brothers regular, Michael Badalucci, playing Thornton's brother-in-law, I think, or cousin.
Tony Shalhoub.
Oh yeah, Tony Shalhoub as the attorney is good. John Polito as a gay version of everything John Polito has ever done. Yeah. It's good, and it does look incredible.
And I think this one with the sad ending is it's the film earns it more than like Burn After Reading, which is like this goofy madcap and everything, and then just has this like depressing, sad ass ending. Versus Man Who Wasn't There, the ending is kind of is set up by the movie a lot better.
Well, it's funny because there is a clear Coen Brothers urge to make you upset, like to do a tragedy. Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's some it's a mix because it's an anthology movie. They were able to do both, but the stuff that's depressing in Ballad of Buster Scruggs is so depressing.
Yeah.
And so you can see like they sometimes give in to that urge to do the tragic ending. And they did that here. So my number 17, but I think it might actually be my number 16, and Drive Away Dolls might be my number 17.
Well, now we're getting into the real good here. We're at the number 10. My number 10 is Miller's Crossing, which is just such a great movie. I'm probably going to say this like all the way the rest of the three. I mean, these movies are just great. Gabriel Byrne is so good in this. John Turturro again is so good in this. It's a 1920s mobster movie done by the Coens. It looks great. The performances are amazing. John Polito again is in this one. Albert Finney is in this. Marcia Gay Harden is in it. Steve Buscemi's got a small part in it. Just a really, really cool movie.
This movie is very important for this podcast because this is probably why Jake thinks John Turturro is Jewish.
Yep. This and a couple other things, but this and Quiz Show.
Oh, right, because there's Quiz Show. Right, but his name is Bernie Birnbaum in Miller's Crossing.
Right, which is this is certainly no small part.
Yeah, this is my number 3. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Miller's Crossing. I just think it's one of the best crime movies of all time. Albert Finney plays an interesting role in my movie fandom, where Big Fish is probably my favorite Tim Burton movie. And Albert Finney's incredible in it. But then Albert Finney also plays the worst version I've ever seen of Hercule Poirot in Murder on the Orient Express, where he's playing it like a clown or like Pee Wee Herman or Mr. Bean. I don't know what he's doing, but I hate it. But either way, I saw Big Fish first. So Finney's always good with me. He's great in this. And the scene outside his house. Oh my God, what an action scene. Very cool. Yeah. Gabriel Byrne, we praised him a few weeks ago because of Hereditary. This is sort of, I think, Gabriel Byrne's starting point for a lot of people, and he's wonderful. All right, hit me with your number 9.
All right, number 9, we're going to hit another one of their remakes that was very good. True Grit, which I think is tremendous. Haley Steinfeld is so good in the lead here. I mean, she was was she even a teenager?
She was 14.
14 to do this. Okay. But I mean, she's great. I mean, she's definitely the lead of this movie. She got an Oscar nomination for supporting actress, but I think that's a crock. I mean, the whole entire movie revolves around her character. I mean, all of the action is happening because of something that happened to her. She's definitely the lead of this movie. She carries it. Jeff Bridges, of course, is amazing. They're really good together. Then, of course, you've got like Matt Damon is really good in this too.
Brolin.
Yeah, Brolin, of course. Even like Barry Pepper is in this. Domhnall Gleeson's got a small part. Really good Western. Again, Roger Deakins shooting it. It looks great. I mean, the acting is great. Much better than, we'll cover the John Wayne version, I think, later in the podcast. But like this is pretty much regarded as the superior film.
So as you hinted, I've never seen the John Wayne version, and that's how we can be part of the podcast later. Yeah. This is my number 5. It's my top 3 or 4 Westerns ever. I only ever saw it in the theater, and I had such a blast. And I left it thinking Haley Steinfeld should win the Oscar. And I was not mad that she was nominated in Best Supporting because I thought she had a better shot, but she didn't win.
And I'm sure that's why they campaigned her there too.
Yeah. Incredible movie. Damon is off his rocker. Damon being Matt Damon and showing us what that would be, because this movie is now 14 years old. And I just really liked them bringing back Bridges. I think we only see him in this and Lebowski in the Coen universe. So
yes, that's correct.
I'm glad they were able to bring him back at least once.
Definitely. Yeah. Just very different parts.
All right, what's next?
Number 8 is another John Turturro star Barton Fink movie about a movie scriptwriter trying to write a movie about wrestling and not being able to do it, and all the crazy things that may or may not happen to him as he's doing that. But yeah, Turturro is the lead here, kills it. John Goodman is amazing in this. Michael Lerner, R.I.P. He just passed away in the last year. Was Oscar nominated for this. I believe that may have been the first Oscar nominations the Coen Brothers ever got was for Barton Fink, because I know Miller's Crossing didn't get an A, and then Raising Arizona, Blood Simple were before that. Yeah, so I think it was Barton Fink had Michael Lerner, and then I think maybe it's like cinematography and production. Is there something like that? Barton Fink had a couple. So Michael Lerner was the first actor they got an Oscar nomination for. But yeah, just a really interesting, like even within the Coen universe, this is a pretty wild movie.
It's really self-contained. It mostly takes place at this hotel, which might be hell, and John Goodman might be Satan.
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know.
I mean, I think that's how I watched it.
I think so. Yeah.
He's the devil. John Mahoney's in it as W.P. Mayhew, and he also died rather recently. So rest in peace, John Mahoney. He's fun in his bathroom scene. And it's funny because Michael Lerner kind of got an Alec Baldwin nomination here because he's not in a lot of the movie and he's doing big stuff in the scene he's in. And it's kind of similar where Baldwin's doing his always be closing thing and Lerner's being like, you got to do it like this, and you got to do it like this, and you got to do it like this. A big, studio head. Terrific. This is my number 6. I love Barton Fink, and it is of course another in a long line of John Turturro's not Jewish? Question mark.
What?
Yeah, great movie. What's next?
Number 7, we've mentioned it already, but the anthology film Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I thought these were really good anthologies. Maybe we could maybe reorder them a little bit. Might be one thing that we could do, but I thought individually they're all very strong. Performances are just great. You've got Liam Neeson is great here. Zoe Kazan I remember very well. James Franco of course has a really funny bit. I think he's in the first one, but
the first one is
Tim Blake Nelson. Yeah, just doing the first
it's
one.
Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, Buster Scruggs, of course, the intro. But yeah, Tim Blake Nelson is great. I love Tim Blake Nelson. Yeah, I just thought this was really cool, really different thing for them, and kind of return to the Western kind of genre for them, but also a lot of different subgenres within the Western that they were able to explore.
Yeah, it's my number 7 also. Twins. I got to see this in the theater, which is cool. It's one of the perks of living in New York, getting to see some of those Netflix movies in the theater. Yeah, I loved Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Tim Blake Nelson's so funny. Got a David Krumholtz cameo. That's great. The second one, I think, was the James Franco one. It's him and Stephen Root. It's kind of a two-hander, and then has the most famous line from the movie, which has become a meme, which is when Franco's about to be hanged for the second time, and he looks at the guy next to him and goes, "First time." Yeah, it's probably the best line from the movie. Then you've got the Liam Neeson, Harry Melling two-hander, which I could have done without. It's just so bleak. And you mentioned there's a lot of different Western genres in this. What genre is this?
Sad.
It's just sad. This might be a genre of like campfire stories, but certainly not of films I've seen. He is just abused by someone for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then killed. Ugh, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And then you've got the great Tom Waits, basically solo outing.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. And then you mentioned the Bill Heck, Zoe Kazan. I think that's the finale.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Which is also a little bit sad, but okay. I'll tell you why it was smart to include the Liam Neeson thing, because if you're going to end with the Zoe Kazan thing, you're not going to feel as bad because you've already sat through the most depressing thing with Liam.
Oh, yeah.
Just terrific. I love it. Number 7.
Yep. Very good. Number 6, I go back to the beginning, is their first film, Blood Simple. Another movie about kind of a regular person getting caught up in something that just keeps spiraling out of control. Dan Hedaya is in this. Emmett Walsh is in it. Young Frances McDormand is in it. It's well acted. There's some scenes that I remember really well. I studied it in one of my film classes that I remember very fondly. Yeah, just a really good movie for a debut. I like the noirish kind of aspect of it, but it doesn't feel like old-fashioned either. Just got a really cool vibe to it. And the performances are great. Emmett Walsh and Dan Hedaya are like two of my favorite character actors, and they're like the two, along with Francis, are like the main stars of this movie. You don't see them like as main roles a lot, and it's really cool to see. Yeah, I just love them.
This is a big one from Emmett Walsh. Yeah, he usually plays much smaller roles, and he's the main villain here.
Yeah.
Yep. So I liked it a lot. It's my number 10, so it's in the top 10. 4.5 stars. I watched it, I want to say in 2021 was when I last saw this, and first saw this. I've only seen it once. Was totally blown away by it. And we talked about in the Nolan episode how Following is a pretty solid, actually a good first movie and a pretty solid movie in general, but a good first movie. This is like are you kidding me? This is their first movie? Give me a break. That doesn't happen. Who is this? Ari Aster, the Coen Brothers. Yep. Like who else we just watched some old Alfred Hitchcock. Bad. I mentioned to you, Kino Lorber has that new version, the full 70-minute version of Stanley Kubrick's first feature,
Oh yeah.
which Kubrick hated
Yeah.
and most people don't like. So, I mean, I'm curious. I'm going to watch that 70-minute version, but
Of course. Yeah.
most people can't get a good movie right off the bat, and the Coens really did.
Really nailed it. All right, we're getting into the real rarefied air here of the Coen Brothers top five, and I'll start off the top five with probably their, well, not probably, their very most Jewish film, A Serious Man, featuring Michael Stuhlbarg in one of my very favorite performances as Larry Gopnik, a man who just cannot catch a break at anything in his life. The whole thing is falling apart for him.
Yeah, this movie rocks. It's
Yeah.
my number 11, 4 stars. Just watched it again last week.
Oh, you did?
Yep, rewatched it for this because I just couldn't really remember it that well. Has maybe my favorite line in any Coen Brothers movie now. I mean, I'm Jewish, so that's why. He goes to his neighbor's house. He's complaining about, he's like telling her he wants to do more nice things for the neighbors. Says, though I don't really care for the neighbors on the other side. She looks at him and goes, "Goys, aren't they?" And then he says, in the funniest, I was on the floor. Yes, very much so. Lost it. Just like his delivery is so perfect. I'm so happy this movie introduced me to Michael Stuhlbarg. I don't know what he was doing before this. I don't know that he was doing much. He got this role because he spoke Yiddish fluently, even though he does not speak Yiddish in this movie. Although there is a lot of Hebrew in the movie because his son is in Hebrew school class, and it's not subtitled, which I thought was interesting and made me feel very good about my Hebrew skills. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's the Book of Job. The morality of it is a little confusing, which I like. Bad things happen to everyone, but they seem to be happening to everyone because they're happening to him. And so it makes you wonder, like, who is the moral center? What is the moral black hole that things are orbiting around? And those questions I think are really interesting. And I like that the movie is left. It has sort of a Take Shelter. I know I've never seen Take Shelter, but I know how it ends. And it has a Take Shelter ending. So right, we've got it coming up.
Good. And Serious Man also has one of my favorite movie villains ever, Cy Abelman.
But is he a villain? That's another question.
Well, he's a villain to Larry. He's a villain to the main character.
Okay, fine. But for one thing, spoiler alert for A Serious Man, he's gone halfway through the movie. Even though he remains in dreams. But he also like he forces Larry to want to be more proactive in his life, which I guess villains often do. But as I was watching it, and everyone loves to hate Cy Abelman, but as I'm watching it, I was like, I don't know if Fred Melamed's actually bad in this. I don't think bad guys accidentally get killed in auto accidents.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
Although even in death, he tortures Larry.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, keep it going.
All right, we're into number 4 now. Number 4 is Inside Llewyn Davis. Amazing movie. Oscar Isaac is phenomenal in this. My wife and I actually watched this not too long ago together. The music is great in this. I love that whole folk scene. I'm a big like Bob Dylan nutcase, so I love that whole like time and place, the village in the 60s. I love those type of songs, and I love that type of character too that he's playing, where he's just so deeply flawed, but he's still he still has these people who care about him, and he just can't. He wants to be better, but he just can't, or he just refuses to, or there's just something blocking him from from doing these things. But he has so many, he still has these people who look out for him, and I love the ending too. I was just like, no matter how good you may be at something, you just weren't the right person at the right time thing. There's just a lot going on in this movie. I think it gets better every time you see it.
So I have two. This is my number 2.
Yeah.
I saw this movie New Year's Day, January 1st, 2014, a couple weeks after it came out, a few weeks after it came out. It's my number 2. I think it's kind of a perfect movie. It's unlike anything else the Coens have done. It might be a time loop movie, which I think is cool. It ends where it begins, and maybe he's stuck in now. It's probably more of a metaphor for like where he is in his life. He can't get, like you were saying, he can't get out of his own way. He's stuck. But also he might just be living the same week over and over and over again, quite literally. It's wonderful. And the music's great. And it makes you, well, it might not make you, but it made me look up Dave Van Ronk and find his music, which is the music in the movie. So yeah, it's terrific. Number 2 for me.
Yep. Yeah. Excellent. Just great. My number 3 is their lone Best Picture winner and their Best Director winner that they won. No Country for Old Men. Just again another sort of a Western. There, I guess, some Western elements in this. Javier Bardem is amazing. He won the Oscar for this. As a villainous performance. Truly one of the greats. Josh Brolin is excellent in this. Tommy Lee Jones is great in this. Kelly MacDonald is very good in this.
It's my number 1.
Nice.
I think No Country for Old Men is a perfect nihilist movie. I'm a sucker for Cormac McCarthy. I do not like all the movie. In fact, really any other movie based on his work, but this is the good one. The road is whatever. All the Pretty Horses is whatever. This one's perfect. It introduced the world at large to Javier Bardem. I still see stupid people not liking that Josh Brolin doesn't get his on-screen hero moment at
Yeah.
all.
Why should he?
He's not a hero.
No, it's not. He's just a guy.
And it also kind of reflects how I feel as I get older, and some parts of the world make less sense to me as I get older. And that my problems seem bigger. My problems seem bigger, but farther away and much less possible to manage. Number one for me.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of the ending too. I know there have been some complaints about the ending, how it just seems to kind of like end real suddenly when Tommy Lee Jones is given his monologue. But that's the feeling you get from watching him do this. Really, the movie couldn't have ended and shouldn't have ended any other way.
Yeah. All right, keep it going. What's next?
All right, so we're at number 2, and this is a film well loved by many. It is called The Big Lebowski. I saw this movie on the opening night that it came out. I was, 15? I think at the time I was a freshman in high school. I had been at what was called Science Olympiad tournament that day. It was like a nerd group where we did a bunch of science projects, and you compete with other nerd groups from other schools. And we got back late that night, and we went to like a 9 or a 10 o'clock showing of it or whatever. So it was me and like a bunch of the other kids from the team. We all went, and we laughed our asses off that night, and I've seen it like 100 times since then. I remember one time when I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, there was a movie theater that did midnight movies every weekend, every like Friday and Saturday, and they had a different movie every weekend. And when they did The Big Lebowski, I went and saw it Friday night and Saturday night. I didn't have any friends when I lived in Omaha because I was there for a short time. So I went and saw it then. Traverse City, where I live now, has a comedy festival. They showed Big Lebowski in the theater then. Saw it once there. It was the first movie that the State Theater in Traverse City showed when they lifted their COVID restrictions after that. My wife and I went and saw it there. I mean, I see it at the theater every time I have an opportunity. My wife and I watched it together multiple times. I've seen it over and over again. I laugh every time. There are lines from this movie I say frequently, not even like I don't even think about like, oh, I'm going to say this from The Big Lebowski now. It just have become things that I say. Like even in my office, I sit in the middle in my office, and I have my 2 bosses sit on either side of me in their offices. And sometimes when their phone is ringing, if they don't pick it up right away, I'll just say, oh, "Phone's ringing, dude." And it's just a little throwaway line that Steve Buscemi has in that movie, but it's invaded my life. I love it. I love it with all my heart.
We have a group chat with Kevin Ford, future guest on this podcast, and you two frequently exchange Big Lebowski memes. I like Big Lebowski a lot. I do not have that same place in my heart for it that y'all do. I saw this for the first time when I was 13, I want to say, with my stepfather at the time, who was a big movie buff. And I remember then leaving the theater being completely bewildered, really not understanding the humor of it. I revisited it 2 years ago and liked it way more, but it still comes in at number 14 on my list. It is my lowest ranked 4-star Coen Brothers movie, which means I like it. I just like these other ones more. And I wonder how much of that is like the Borat effect, where I've just heard these lines so much now because they are so in the zeitgeist. Big Lebowski is definitely not the Coen Brothers' most watched movie, but it probably is its most referenced movie. So I'm just like a little burned out on it. I'm surprised it's not your number 1, given your feelings for it.
It's close. I mean, it's tough between 1 and 2 for sure.
So what is number 1?
Number 1 is Fargo, like where it all began. I think Fargo is like a perfect movie. I think Frances McDormand's performance is literally like just one of the best I've ever seen. She's so good in it. Every line she has is perfect. Every delivery she has is perfect. I love the villain. Well, they're not really. I guess yeah, the villains. Yeah, Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare. Well, I love them together.
I mean, William H. Macy is kind of the villain.
Yeah, he's kind of a villain, but he's such an inept villain, but he's so good in that part. I mean, he's so pathetic, and you still kind of feel like he's got this innate ability where you still kind of feel bad for him, even though he is very obviously very 100% doing a very awful, very evil thing to his wife. But I still kind of felt bad for him because it went worse for him than it really like expected to, because he's dumb. And while he's doing a very mean, very evil thing, I don't think he is like an evil character. Like he's not an evil person. Whereas like the Peter Stormare guy, he's just a bad person. You know, Steve Buscemi, he's like a bad person doing bad things. William H. Macy is doing bad things, I think, just because he's really stupid and he's really desperate. And he plays that part. I mean, he's done that many times since then, and he does it perfectly. And again, I love the way this movie is shot, just the bleak, desolate landscapes of, Minnesota and the Dakotas in April. I love that they pretend this is a true story when it's not. I don't know why they did that.
Well, this is where I learned that you can say that and it's not legally there's nothing behind it.
Yeah, you can just do that if you want to. I think I heard one time it was they put that on there because they thought that the story was so hard to believe. They thought it would make it more like that, like more people would believe that it actually happened. or that it was more blue or something like that. There was some reason they did it, but it's not true at all. But yeah, I really just think it just from one scene to the next, I think it's perfect. John Carroll Lynch has also a really small part in it as Frances McDormand's husband. He only has a couple little lines, but every one of them is is again perfect. Like, oh, y'all fix because she's pregnant. Marge, Frances McDormand's very pregnant in the movie, and he's so sweet with her. And
why did you stop saying Marge Gunderson?
Oh, I did.
You said Marge Frances McDormand.
Oh, I don't know. That's weird. I don't know why I did that.
It's one of the great character names.
Marge Gunderson. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a great character. I mean, the Gundersons. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota. I knew Gundersons. That's a very common list. And this is the way people talk. My family's weird. My family never got that Minnesota accent, but I 100% know people who talk exactly like that, and it's not exaggerated. The oh yeah, sure, you betcha thing. I mean, 100% I know people who talk like that.
Did you grow up in rural Minnesota?
I mean, ish. Certainly not a big town.
Because I'm from suburban Detroit, and you're from a resort-ish area, like a touristy area in Michigan. And neither of us have like pronounced Michigan accents.
Right.
Like it depends on where you grew up. In Manhattan, people don't have the same accent that they have in the Bronx.
That's true.
So that's why this stuff happens. I'm going to say a couple of things. One, it's my number 4. I agree with everything you said. It's an incredible movie. I think that one of the places that Drive Away Dolls goes wrong is by having the Joey Slotnick and CJ Wilson goon characters try to do what Peter Stormare, Steve Buscemi were doing, but way less effectively. And I think that's all in the writing, not in the acting, because they're having some Joey Slotnick's having interesting conversation in the car in Drive Away Dolls. And that's the same thing. Like Buscemi's doing all the talking and Wilson and Stormare are the volatile ones, but it's just the dynamic doesn't work as well. I think Fargo's amazing. I think the first and second seasons of the Fargo TV show are incredible. They're like loose sequel. Well, the first season's a loose prequel, and the second, because it like sort of explains where the money came from. And the second season is also a prequel. It takes place like 30 years before that.
Oh, wow.
And they have if you haven't seen them, the vibe is the same. They get the tone down exactly. And I haven't seen the 5th season. I didn't like what I saw of the 3rd, didn't watch the 4th. I've heard the 5th is good. So I want to check out this 5th season of Fargo. And they're unrelated to each other. They're anthology. You can just dive in wherever you want. So I'll check out this John Hamm season of Fargo. If you ever wondered what John Hamm would be like in the Fargo universe, that's what. Yeah, it's great. And it's the movie that I would say it's the movie that put them on the map, no?
Yeah, I would think so. It was a pretty big hit. Like I said, Barton Fink was their first movie that got like Oscar nominations ever, but then Fargo was like, a Best Picture nominee. Frances McDormand did win Best Actress. And it was a pretty sizable hit for them. And then after that was Lebowski, which did not catch on at all. Until it became a hit later on. And then after that was, I think, Oh Brother was right after that. And that became a pretty good size hit. The soundtrack was an enormous hit. I think the soundtrack was bigger than the movie for that one. And then, they were kind of off and running after that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's hope that they get back together because we miss them together. We like them apart, but we miss them together. I'm happy we were able to do this. We'll be back next week with 2009. We're doing 2009, a little Linklater, a little Bollywood. If you want to know what is coming out next week, go to our Letterboxd profile. You can find me at Brad Garoon on Letterboxd. I think Jake, you're Jake Ziegler on Letterboxd.
Yep, it's Jake_Ziegler.
And both of us have pinned to our profiles our Never Did It podcast list. You could also just search for the Never Did It podcast list. And the 2 movies that will be discussed on next week's episode are always at the top of that list.
We have a Facebook page now as well. You can check that out at facebook.com/Never Did It podcast. I'll be posting on that with new episodes and just fun updates from time to time about what we're watching and what's coming up.
So check that out. And thank you for joining us for Never Did It.